Arthur, what was your favorite memory from LSU Bama game weekend? Ah, yes, when Pat McAfee got the crowd to chant it on game day. Awesome, cool moment. What was your second favorite memory of the LSU Bama game weekend? Yeah, me too. We've got LSU football, where the Tigers go from here, and some thoughts on the Saints. I'm Ruddy Rutledge, and this here is some Bayou football. Sup? Welcome all to episode 9 of the Bayou Football Video Podcast. I am Ruddy Rutledge, and he is the main character, Arthur the Bayou Party Dog. Let's get the basics out of the way first for those who were locked in a closet last weekend. And that actually sounds fun compared to having to sit through that football game Saturday night. LSU embarrassed its fans, its supporters, and its boosters who spent all day in the hot, humid, nasty, rainy weather to support the Tigers in their bid to make the first ever 12-team college football playoff. And LSU gave its fans nothing, literally nothing to cheer for. LSU embarrassed its fans, and LSU embarrassed itself in a 42-13 beatdown at the hands of a Alabama Crimson Tide team that was quite unimpressive coming into the game, had actually lost a game to Vanderbilt. The Tigers were clinging to perhaps their final lifeline as far as the college football playoff goes, and after not only losing, but losing in embarrassing fashion on their own home field, it's fairly safe to say that the Tigers will be watching the playoffs from home this season. Speaking of embarrassment, LSU fans are more than embarrassed all week, have been more than embarrassed at the performance of their head coach, Brian Kelly. Rough week for Coach Kelly. Rough week. And I've not completely given up on the LSU coach because, quite honestly, LSU can't afford to give up on him at this point. They have to make this work. But I was not expecting to be saying this at this point in year 3 of his tenure. Coach Kelly, you looked like a clown on Saturday night. On the biggest stage LSU will see all season, all the stars and alumni were out. Paul Skeens, Livy Dunn, Mondo Duplantis, Flaugier, Sha'Carri Richardson, Mike the Tiger, check that, Omar the Tiger, the Burrows, the parents, the incomprehensible Jeff Landry, even Carol Baskin wound up getting involved later on. Amidst all the hullabaloo, and after all the brouhaha, Kelly's Tigers were shamelessly disgraced in their own stadium. Mercilessly humiliated from start to finish by the Gumps. And it wasn't even that good of a Gump team. Inexcusable performance by LSU. Just a few notes on the game. We'll start with the defense. Jalen Milroe. Okay, I got on this show last week and I begged the LSU coaching staff. Not that they're watching some little nothing podcast YouTube channel. And everybody else was saying the same thing too, but I begged them. I begged them not to let a repeat of last year happen again. And guess what? Jalen Milroe happened again. The Bama quarterback ran for 4 touchdowns on the Tigers last season in Tuscaloosa. And somehow, some way, he managed to equal that total with 4 more touchdowns all on the ground on the Tigers Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. And he had even more rushing yards than he did last year. How? How does LSU keep letting these running quarterbacks, I'm not even calling them dual threats because they rarely throw the ball, running quarterbacks look like Heisman Trophy candidates on a weekly basis against this defense? How? Lenore Sellers from South Carolina. Marcel Reed ran all over him in one half. Milroe. And possibly facing another one this Saturday in DJ Lagway from Florida if he's healthy. Best I can tell is the Tigers simply don't have the talent up front. They're not playing their younger, more talented players on the defensive line. It's always seniority first with Brian Kelly, is what it is. But I look out there and I see LSU's defensive front and I don't see NFL talent. I don't see NFL players out there. And we're used to being able to watch LSU and watch talented future NFL players. It's coming. It's on the way. You have a great recruiting class incoming. You have some talented freshmen on this team right now who are standing on the sidelines and watching. But out there on the field playing right now, it's not there. It's not there. However, that is no excuse for the lack of intensity, the lack of fire, the lack of passion from this entire defensive unit. At least from what we saw Saturday night. Blake Baker is a highly paid defensive coordinator, and he has this season made big improvements to this defense. Big improvements from where you were last year. Nowhere to go but up, but still. But I don't see how this defense, even any defense being shorthanded in talent, I don't see how any defense can allow one player to single-handedly beat you by himself in the exact same way that he single-handedly beat you by himself the last time you played him. Blake has the tape from last season, right? He wasn't here, but he knows who Jalen Milroe is. Does Blake Baker have access to LSU's 2023 game film? Because I do. YouTube.com, coach. Use the app on your phone or tablet. And while you're there, like and subscribe to Bayou Football. Fact is, there were multiple lapses in effort from LSU defensive players Saturday night. It's not that hard to find these videos on X. And there is simply no excuse for that. No excuse. Milroe didn't run like this all over Vanderbilt. Milroe didn't run like this on Tennessee. He didn't run like this on South Florida. Hell, Jalen Milroe had 12 carries for 2 yards on South Florida. No, LSU's defensive line got pushed around. Their linebackers look slow and hesitant, and their secondary acts like they don't even want to be there. That was the story of the LSU defense from Saturday night, and honestly, I don't want to talk about them anymore. Offense, even worse. In 6 quarters of football, 6 abysmal quarters, Garrett Nussmeier has gone from projected first-round draft pick by some analysts to probably needs to hit the transfer portal this offseason by others. 6 quarters. He's got all the arm talent in the world. He can make every throw. But where his head is right now is not where you want any quarterback to be on any level. It's not where I want the starting quarterback for LSU's head to be. I know that. Nuss has become a turnover monster, and he makes those turnovers at the most inopportune time for his team, almost on a weekly basis. And I can't say it enough. LSU has no running game. And that is a big problem. It makes things far more difficult on the quarterback. But the Tiger offensive line, they're simply not able to move big-time SEC defensive linemen off the ball, off the line of scrimmage. They can't do it. They can't do it. They can't do it. And really, because of that and that alone, LSU really doesn't deserve the college football playoff. If you can't run the ball, bottom line, LSU failed to show up at all in its biggest game of the year, and the Tigers were physically dominated from the opening kick until the final whistle on both offense and defense. Now what? Well, now Arthur is in the kitchen sipping on some warm beer. Helps get him focused for the final segment coming up. And yes, for the LSU Tigers, the big question is, now what? What does LSU have left to play for? Well, the Tigers have no gimmies left. They have to travel to Florida, and then they have home games against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma to close the season. So again, the question is, what do they have left to play for? The answer is kind of simple, both simple and disheartening. A 10-win season. That's it. That's what they're playing for, realistically, from here on out. And it's just the way it is. You get to 9 wins by winning out, and you win your bowl game, get to 10 wins, and then Brian Kelly can tell all the recruits, I've had 8 consecutive seasons of 10 or more wins as a head coach. Yeah, that Alabama game was pretty important. It was really important. But I guess I can't completely leave out the fact that the Tigers can technically make the playoffs, but only if they win out, make the SEC championship game, and win that. And based on where this team is right now, the chances of all those things happening are quite slim, I would say. And on top of that, just in order to get to Atlanta, the Tigers would need a lot of other balls to bounce their way in other games around the league. And until we get closer to that situation becoming a realistic possibility, I'm not going to go over all those scenarios here. It's just too soon. Let's just say that the Tigers need to beat Florida this week. But bottom line is, this is not where a program a caliber of LSU's wants to be at this point in the season, or should be. 2 weeks into November, you're out of the discussion for the 12-team playoff. You're not even in the race. The Tigers should at least make the discussion at this point. No. But they're not. They're not in the discussion. And so my issue is there are 12 teams that will make this playoff. As everybody knows, it's going from 4 to 12. And LSU, just so we're clear, the same LSU program that won a national title with a grass-eating moron as a head coach, the same program that won a national title with a gravel-gargling meathead as a head coach, that LSU program is eliminated from the 12-team playoff in mid-November. Wow. Won't be there. I mean, I realized this was a rebuild when Kelly got here. There was 38 players on scholarship here when he got here. And that lies at the feet of Coach O. Coach O deserves blame for that. He drove this program off a cliff from a personnel standpoint before he left, from a talent standpoint. And the school was late to the party with the NIL collective. They had to pay him off and his staff. So I didn't expect the Tigers 3 years later to be sitting as a top seed for this playoff or something like that. I didn't expect that exactly, but not even in the discussion for top 12. Not even in the discussion midway through November. Not in the picture. LSU is generally thought of as a top 12 program in college football, isn't it? The Tigers have top 12 facilities at their disposal, don't they? I know they do. LSU's top 12 in recruiting, usually on a given year, aren't they? Yeah, much higher. Of course they are. LSU's paying top 12 money to their assistant coaches. Top 1 money there. Maybe not top 1, but pretty close. Point still stands. LSU has a top 12 fan base, a top 12 stadium, top 12 best looking uniforms, top 12 weight room, top 12 locker room, top 12 nutritional staff, don't they? Well, then why are they eliminated from the 12-team playoff in mid-November? It's a valid complaint. I don't have the answers. All I know is this team better get serious this week or things could get really ugly to close out the season. Florida, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, all three of them can beat you. This Saturday, the Tigers travel to Gainesville to take on a Gator team that's also in the dumps. But Billy Napier's squad has the luxury of playing this one at home in what's always going to be a tough environment to go into. I know playing at home does little to fire up the emotions of this apparently lifeless LSU football team, as we saw Saturday. But I'm willing to bet Florida, even though it's coming off a devastating blowout loss at Texas, I'm willing to bet they come out and play with some emotion, some fire, some passion as they return to their home field in the Swamp. A lot of questions surrounding this matchup. And now I'm seeing that Billy Napier has confirmed that DJ Lagway will return at quarterback for Florida from injury and is expected to start. Well, so the first question is easy then, isn't it? Can LSU devise a defensive game plan to stop a running quarterback for once? Guess we'll see. The tape says, hell no. They cannot. But maybe Blake Baker will come up with something. Can Nussmeier regain his composure and play with just a little poise in the pocket, a little awareness? Maybe. And it's a good thing this one is going to be played in the afternoon and not at night. That should reduce some of that noise significantly in the Swamp. Can LSU run the football? Again, the tape says no. But I'm predicting they find some light against a reeling Florida defense that's really struggling right now. I'm also predicting that Baker, who is a solid game day tactician, will help LSU get some stops late in the game, late in the fourth quarter with the game on the line when they just need stops. However they get them is however they get them. But I think Blake Baker will play a hand in that. LSU will get the stops they need in the fourth quarter, and the Tigers will stop the bleeding. They will snap their 2-game losing streak and pick up an emotional win this Saturday night against Florida. Tigers 30, Gators 27. Welcome back, Arthur. It's on to the New Orleans Saints. It's all about the Riz on Poydras Street these days. The Saints snapped a 7-game losing streak this past Sunday in their first game since former head coach Dennis Allen was fired. New Orleans beat their red-hot rivals, the Atlanta Falcons, 20-17 in a thriller in the Superdome. Interim coach Darren Rizzi is man of the hour, or man of the week, I should say, for the Who Dat Nation. Rizzi is fun to watch. I'll be the first to admit that. It's enjoyable to watch his passion for the game, his passion for coaching. He's energetic, he's in tune with the players, and he's shaking up that locker room like a good interim coach does. Okay, now I certainly like what I've seen from him, but let's not act like it's hard to bring more energy than Dennis Allen. Now, you may have heard the story of Rizzi clogging up the toilet in the coach's bathroom in the Superdome the day of the game against the Falcons. Well, something tells me they never had to worry about that with Dennis Allen. Allen doesn't strike me as a go to number 2 at the office kind of guy. No, he probably just clenched it up and saved it till he went home. Dennis Allen probably even poops daintily. Imagine that. So point being, Rizzi ain't DA, but is Rizzi NFL head coach material? Well, I don't know. He made some questionable decisions as head coach in that game Sunday. But he certainly had the look of a head coach in his post-game locker room speech to the players. He definitely had the attention and the respect of the players. Right now, it seems like everybody wants to find that next Dan Campbell type, the fiery, rah-rah coach who inspires the players. And Rizzy may be the closest thing to that this year. But we obviously need to see more on the field in games. And speaking of games on the field, some fans were upset with the Saints this week for going all in on trying to win that game, as they wanted the Saints to tank or lose on purpose, with the idea being you get a better draft pick at the end of the season, the worse record you have. Okay, here's what I think about that. Get real. Get real. I mean, I get the idea behind tanking. New Orleans had the projected number 2 pick in the draft, meaning if the season had ended just before last weekend's games, the Saints would have had the number 2 pick. And by winning the game, they're no longer projected to have that number 2 pick. If you think Mickey Loomis has the word tank, that's the Saints GM, has the word tank in his vocabulary, or the word rebuild for that matter, then you've been watching a different Mickey Loomis all these years. You may have been watching alternate universe Mickey Loomis. Multiverse Mickey Loomis may tank, but Loomis in this division, in this dimension, and this division, does not tank, nor does he believe in it. Also, I do get the idea behind tanking. You want a better future for your team in the long term. But as a fan, it is impossible for me to watch this group. It's impossible for me to watch Cam Jordan and root against him. It's impossible for me to root against Tyrann Mathieu. Honey Badger still takes what he wants, by the way, in case some of y'all didn't know. Impossible to root against Demario Davis, against Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill. Now, as I watched that game unfold Sunday, I wanted those guys to beat the Atlanta Falcons so bad. Lost draft pick and all. Or not lost pick, lost position. And hey, it's not like there's just a few games left. No, it's really too soon to tank. There's 7 games left. And in the NFC South, well, last I checked, it's not exactly a world beater division. So no, tanking is not something this front office is ever going to consider. Now, trading away a pricey asset, well, sure, they just traded one in Marshawn Lattimore. But they're still going to try to win every game they play. So might as well just sit back and enjoy what the rest of the season has in store for the black and gold. And that rest of the season will start this Sunday, as the Saints will be hosting the Cleveland Browns, and this game will mark the return of Jameis Winston to New Orleans. Now the Browns' starting quarterback, Winston was a member of the Saints for 4 seasons from 2020 through 2023, and he filled roles for the team as both a starter and a backup quarterback. But it was his last game in New Orleans that was recently brought up again following the firing of Dennis Allen, as there are many who believe Winston's actions that day set the course for Allen's eventual firing last week. How, you ask? Well, let me tell you the tale of the time Jameis Winston almost got Dennis Allen beat up. Ready? It was a humid day in early January, and the air was thick and odoriferous. It was the 2023 season finale, and Jameis suddenly asked his coach, Dennis, if the Saints, who were up 41-17 on the Falcons with just over a minute to play, could run one special play to get his most special favorite running back, Jamal, into the end zone for the first time that season. Dennis refused and instructed his offense to forego any shenanigans and to kneel the ball. Jameis said, "Kill that noise, coach," and refused to listen. He defied Dennis's orders and conspired with his teammates to engineer a touchdown play for his most special favorite running back, Jamal. And the Saints then punched in another one into the end zone against their hated rivals, thus making the final score 48-17 instead of 41-17. The game soon ended. The season was over for both teams as neither made the playoffs, and all was well until it wasn't. On the field, during the post-game handshake, Falcons coach Arthur, not you, we'll call him Smitty, who was fired from his job not even 30 minutes after this, decided he wanted some smoke. Clearly angry, Smitty barked in Dennis's face, berating Dennis as if the Saints coach had just stolen money. As those who know him best might expect, Dennis then cowered in fear, and in his post-game press conference, he apologized to Smitty and the Falcons for running up the score, just as he let everyone know that his players had no respect for him, and they had defied his instruction not to score. "I'm sorry, I told them not to do it, but they just didn't listen to me." That was the leader of the professional football team in New Orleans for almost 3 years. We can argue about tanking and rebuilding, but when you consider that story, and then you look at the man leading roughly this same group of players today, it's hard to not have a whole new outlook on the rest of this season. Ain't nobody tanking. Nobody tanking, so might as well enjoy it. I've got the Saints over the Browns, 27-17. If you smell what the Riz is cooking.